you very much.
We'll have this, then we'll have the little bits of eats, and then we'll have a general chat afterwards about any questions you've got. And I'm sure Bob will be very happy to, Bob and Cliff will be very happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, you can answer questions as well.
About anything.
That's it, we're only just the two that are not here. So
Right. Thank you all for turning up. I'm delighted with the crowd. I wish I could take some credit for it, but I know Sonia's has made some delicious cakes, and that's the real reason I'm here. So the talk will last about 5 minutes, then we'll go straight. I was asked some months ago to do this talk, and I volunteered, not realising I'd actually double booked myself, so it got cancelled. But at least I made it this time, so let's see what I can make of it. The subject matter is storage and preservation of ONS, your data. But I'm really going to push a bit more about the Guild archive facility, but we'll say a bit more about that later on. First of all, you need to ask yourself some questions. I hope you've already asked yourself, is your ONS data secure? Everyone says yes. Have you archived your data?
Yes.
Good, good. Do you back up your data regularly?
Every year.
Every year? You're better than me. Have you had a fatal heart?
Oh, yes.
Oh, more?
Never.
1, 2, 3,
Never. A double.
4. Wow. I haven't yet. But
Never. I've been working on computers.
with all the Guild financial data, I hate to think that mine is on at least 3 computers and a number of other sites. The interesting one, how do you digitise your paper records? Because most of what we're talking about is the digital information, but a lot of it is on paper and you ought to digitise it. Ken, I know, has digitised a hell of a lot, and I will be talking about the facilities the Guild can help you on that. And finally, have you digitised your certificates, your birth certificates, your marriage certificates, death certificates, and any others you may have? Certainly if you paid for them, rather than getting them via the Guild Marriage Challenge,
Yes.
they're obviously very valuable, so I encourage you to do it. If you have already done it, please think about sending them to the BMD Vault Coordinator, which happens to be yet another of my hats. I will explain a bit more about that. It's the most interesting subject. So, where do we start? What does the Guild offer us? The online archive, which is mainly what I'm going to talk about, and it's a much underutilised facility. Obviously, the marriage index is ways of getting your data, and if you're using the marriage index, of course, your data is being preserved to a certain extent. Marriage challenges, again, is a means of getting certificates, it's a means of getting information about marriages, and if you've got a lot of them, and in my case, I've got 2 studies, the Kemball study, which has hardly had any work done for the last 5, 6 years. How long have I been treasurer? 7 years. And Ralph, ONS study. To give you an idea, I've got something like 21,000 marriages that I'm going through at the moment. Quite a lot of those have gone via the marriage challenge. We also have the digitised facility. We've got an excellent contract. I managed to screw the company down to the lowest possible figure I could, and they did some wonderful jobs for us 4 or 5 years ago, for about 3 years until they went bankrupt. But I got an excellent deal out of it. Yeah. Yes, I think we did. And then finally the BMD Vault. I'll briefly mention that now, just in case you get bored and we don't get enough time at the very end. But basically we started a project that was going to enable us to copy all the data that was on existing certificates, mainly marriage certificates at that stage, that was on the Guild website, or more precisely on the Guild database. It was on the database but not on the website because it was Crown copyright, and we couldn't actually show it on the database. But if we created full certificates, we could therefore show them on the Guild website. It has developed now. Instead, it's going to be a search facility. So you'll be able to look at the BMD vault once we've got it really established and inquire for all the names you're interested in. But it's extended from that, and it's now going to be births, marriages and deaths, and it's not just going to be the UK, it's going to be worldwide. It's only early days. We've only been doing it for a few months. I've got about 400,000 records at the moment. I hope to get 1 million by the time we actually formally introduce it. So that's going to be an interesting one. A lot of work involved. But the main one, the Guild Electronic Archive. It's a facility that was introduced by the Guild 7, 8 years ago, and still is not being utilised anywhere near enough. So what I want to explain is actually what it does and why you should be using it. It allows you to present your records from your own one-name study to internet users by placing the information on the Guild website. Access to the records may be restricted to ourselves, fellow members of the Guild, or it may be available to everyone, whatever you prefer. It's your data, you control it. You basically upload the information and enable it to be searched by whoever you determine, or not at all. So it's obviously a secure means of retaining some of your data. The archive, Guild Archive, has been designed for two objectives. Publicity for your own one-name study, allowing your records to be searched in a structured manner, while limiting complete access. So when somebody does a search, they only get a limited number of results at each time. So if you want to get a lot of records, you're going to take a lot of time. But it is a very useful facility. It's also, and more importantly, for the talk, this talk, it provides you with long-term storage. Long-time storage is good because you don't want to lose your data, either by a hard crash or by your house going on fire, catching on fire. You may think this doesn't happen. Well, since my time as treasurer, I know of at least 8 people who have lost their entire one-name study, and 2 of them by fires. It can happen. It's been slow in getting people to use it. At the moment there's 294 names on the Guild Archive, which only represents 12.5% of the registered surnames that we've got. So why are people not using it? The first thing you've got to do is make an application for each registered name you hold. As I mentioned before, it's internet based. It allows web users to search the records by specifying the details of the information they were seeking. But only a limited number of results are presented at any one time. Guild members have to set up the account for the registered name. There's obviously no charge for this facility. Even the treasurer won't charge you this time. The Guild Archive includes a facility for copying records to the Guild website itself. And the important thing is the records, the data, remains your data. You have total control over the data. The important thing is, I've got quite a few records, not as many as other people, but the initial reaction was, well, I'll wait until I've got all my data before I upload it. You don't need to do that, you just upload what you want and then increase it every now and again as and when you get more data. So you could start off with just 100 marriages or 100 births or 100 deaths and then gradually expand them. The important thing is you can monitor and control the data that's provided. The the facility provides you with a search so you can identify who's been carrying out researches on your name. By that you get an idea of when it was last searched, what name they were searching on, and the number of hits they achieved. What you can't tell is who is actually doing the search. You can get an idea if you get repetitive searches, because it may be a guild member that you could work out by what he's looking for. I certainly know from my Kemball ones, because it's a fairly rare name, I tend to work out by subsequent emails that I receive who actually did the search. I mentioned that the number of hits or results you get can be limited and is limited, but again you have that control, you determine how much can be displayed at any one time, and there is a range that you set up. The important thing is, of course, that you cannot say, give me every single Kemball for every birth, marriage and death. Well, not yet anyway. Gives you an example of searches done on marriages. So this is the sort of information you would have that would enable you to see how important your data is. I need to be over there for smiling at the camera. And it gives you a possible contact of more people coming to you for the information about your surname, which is what you want. I'll go on to that a little bit later, because there is a separate registered mode where you actually control individually who can actually access your data, and it's something I use. What type of records? Well, initially it was births, marriages and deaths, of course, in England and Wales, how we always start, adoptions in England and Wales, and then births, marriages, deaths in Scotland, and then probate in England and Wales. Basically Paul Millington set up the record structure for each of those, and then gradually added each record type, but it was restricted to those types of records. So you'll probably say to yourself, well, that's helpful, but I want more records. Well, it has been developed. That's the sort of a screen that you'll get when you're searching on a particular surname. It probably won't be Kemball, but you put in this case Bert, which happens to be my father's name, not Bertram, not Bertie. That was my grandfather and great-grandfather's names. And this will come up with all of them. And you can specify the period. In this case it was 1837 to 2002, but you can make it any years that you're interested in. And the previous screen showed you examples of what people have been looking at. Once you put in the research, that's the sort of details you get back. This shows Bertha as well, and Bert Charles, which is my father. Very helpful, at least it is for the very few people that contact me. Well, I say very few. There never used to be very many. There's only about 104, exactly 104 in the 1881 census, and there was about 106 in 2003. So we haven't progressed very far. But I have got an increase in the number of people who are coming to me. Why? Because I set up a profile, but that's another subject. So if you haven't got a profile, I certainly recommend you set one up. Death searches, again, the search was on Bert, but it came up with various other ones, and it gives you the idea of the range of information that you can do. Probate searches, again, as the facility increased, the number and types of data got more interesting, and certainly I had a tremendous amount of information on probate that I gathered over the years. I've been doing my study for 35 years now. I suppose I ought to say 30 years with a 5-year gap, but it's an interesting subject. Some of the developments included what do people want? Well, people tend not to go to Paul too often with what they want. Paul develops what he thinks you want. But gradually, as the more users he gets, the more he does get contact and the more he develops it. The first one was, initially you could only do searches on individual names, but now you can do a search on the totality of every single record that you've got up there, which is a useful one because it gives us sort of a summary record to give you an idea of if you were searching on that particular surname, how many hits you would get, and then you could do a subsequent search on the ones that particularly interest you. So that was a good improvement. The important thing is, as I said, is you're controlling the information on the archive itself. So one thing you want to be able to do is determine what you want with that data when you leave the guild. Unfortunately, that can mean when you not just leave the guild, but you also leave this world for better things, one hopes. So you all have a facility, those of you, of course, that have set up your archive, to determine what you want with the data itself. Unfortunately, obviously some of them, far too many as far as I'm concerned, are saying just delete it. That's more because the way it was set up. It's set up so it was default as delete until it was actually specified. So that's why it's so high. It should have been done the other way around in my opinion, but there you go. 25 have said restricted. There's various ways you can restrict it to individuals, to a one-name society even, or to just guild members. Or you can make it completely open, and 81 have made it open. The alternative one was to close it down altogether so the data wouldn't be retained at all. What have been the developments? Well, in February 2009 there was a user-defined field added. So at the moment when Paul developed each of the standard data sets, it had obviously certain fields in, and he also specified which fields could be searched on. That was a little bit restrictive and we wanted a bit more flexibility, so in 2009, February, Paul introduced the facility so you could define additional fields that you wanted in whatever data set you had related to the sets he had already set up. So you could expand on how much data you retained. It hadn't yet got to the stage where you could have any data set you like, but it was coming. The previous screen I showed you about the general search facility, and that certainly seems to be useful. In January 2010 was the time he then developed the ability to define your own types of records. So instead of restricting yourself to, I think it was about 10 data sets at that time, you can now have any data set you like. You've got records you want to hold, you can hold it on the guild archive, no matter what it is, which country it's from, whatever format it is. It will insist on having at least 2 fields that are searchable, which would be surname and forename, but you can have additional fields, and there would be a certain limit to the number of additional fields that you could also have searches on. But you determine what that would be. I think that was a tremendous development, but it still hasn't been utilised by that many people. To expand on that facility, in June 2011, Paul enabled you to define the categories of data to assist in listing the record types. So you've got the standard record types, so it would be births, marriages, deaths, and then you started introducing your own data types, and they would come under the birth categories, because you've got some for Ireland, you've got some for New Zealand, you've got various other records you want them all grouped into a category that you determine is the birth category or whatever. And each of those records, you could then start sharing the data structure with other members. So if you've introduced a data set and you think it's a good data set, you can then share it with other members. Predominantly we're talking about people who are using the facility, and for them to see what you've created, and they can copy that down, upload it onto their archive and start collecting their own data, not collecting the data but start storing the data. Basically it's saying you don't have to reinvent the wheel on all data types. It's very useful. But the one I like to get onto, the one I really like, because it's one that I use, is the registered mode, which is the one where you have total control. It was introduced in March 2010, and the facility restricts the access to registered people. So instead of making it open to all guild members or making it open to the public, you only make it open to people who come to you and say, I want to look at your records. And you can vet them and determine whether they can have it. The obvious example where you would want to do that is if you've got a one-name study that's also got a one-name society. Well, I've got a one-name society, or more correctly, I was doing some work for a cousin's wife, and in the research I was doing, she had some Ralphs in her family history. So I said, Ralphs, I recognise that name, and there was a couple of members who were researching that name. So I inquired, as we always do, and said, can you give me any information on these Ralphs? And they duly gave me some useful information. I got interested, so my cousin's wife paid for me to join the International Ralph Society, and they insisted I go down to their annual AGM. Like everything I tend to do, I tend to go overboard. I'm now the treasurer and the secretary, the membership secretary of the International Ralph Society. I haven't got a single Ralph in my family tree as far as I'm aware. But facility such as this has proved very useful, because we've got various members in the International Ralph Society. It's a relatively small organisation, about 140 people worldwide, but it's in about 16 countries. And we're using the registered mode to be able to get as many of the interested members of the International Ralph Society to use it. And this is a very good way of doing it. One of the things it gives you an option is to send out, in the same way as the chairman does, news flashes. So you could generate information and encourage people to do more work. And the thing I'm developing at the moment is when I get inquiries on surnames, I tend to send off emails left, right and centre to the main researchers in the International Ralph Society, because there's a limited amount that I can do, because my knowledge of Ralphs is obviously not as great as theirs. But I'm starting to use the newsflash facility to say, we've had this recent inquiry about such and such, and for all you registered members, you may be interested, can you respond? It's a useful facility, at least I think so. Again, with everything that Paul does, he ensures there's adequate control, and there's an access log for any of the registered archives that the Guild have got at the moment. This is the one for the Ralph archives. It gives you a list of the data types that it got. It gives you an idea of the last time there were searches. So again, you can control it. You control who has it. Again, you've got the control over the password, similar to the way it is for the Guild, that you determine, you meaning the registered member, determines what their password is. But I can, at a stroke, take them off if I wanted to. Of course, I would only do that if they were doing something untoward. So far, nobody has. Again, it gives you an ability to review your own records. So what you're doing is uploading the information, You're obviously checking the information before you upload it, but you can use the archive facility to check what you've got. And in point of fact, I use the archive facility and this facility for checking my records rather than using my main database, because this tends to be more user friendly, and it's all in one place. Just an example of the types of records, again this is in the RELF archives, of the sort of information that's available. So it's helpful for you, so I can use the archive facility to do a search more on the Kemballs and the RELFs, of course, if I get an inquiry. I can use either my main database or I can use the archive. It just depends on what type of inquiry it is and how I'm going to benefit from it. The archive facility continues to increase. In October 2011 we then started getting marriages, deaths for Ireland and census records for Scotland. So as you can see, over a period of time, the amount of data, or the types of data you recall, the amount of data is obviously up to you, increased quite considerably. And we're now to the stage where you think of it, you can store the data. At least I can't think of anything you can't do with it at the moment. I mentioned about creating your own data and sharing that data set, basically the structure of the file that you want. And the template that's been introduced enables you to see the different types of records that are available. It enables you to share the new data types, so as soon as a new one's up, soon you go onto the website and go into the Guild template library, you can identify what has been created. There'll be a whole list of them. And not too many people have used it, but it's quite useful, because if you're using the archive, you want to say, what else can I do with it? Well, you can start thinking about reinvent a will. I would suggest you look at the Guild template and say, what's there? Oh, that's useful, I'll use that. Not only can you use it, but you can change it. Basically, you upload it from the template library, and then you can play around with it as much as you like. So you, again, create your own data type, and again, you can feed it back into the library if it's significantly different, or if it's even subtly different. Let other people who are using the archive see what it is. The important thing is you also determine what fields can be searched on. So you've got, again, total control. Control over what can be searched, control over what is there. I've shown you the first top part of the template for the library, and it gives you some examples of the type of things that are there. And who's developed it. You won't be surprised, Paul Millington's there a few times, but there are others that are gradually developing. As more and more people get to use the archive facility, the greater this facility is going to be. Am I encouraging you yet? So, how many have we got? I mentioned earlier there was 294 published archives, and I mentioned that it was only representing 12.5% of the registered surnames, which in my opinion is not by far anywhere near enough. 220 of them are open archives, 92 are restricted, 7 are restricted but advertised. I'm not too sure what the subtle difference is on that. I meant to have a quick look before I did this talk. Afraid time ran out. A lot of treasury work I've been doing over the last couple of days. And there's only 28 that are using the archives that need the registration, the restricted one. The one I've been emphasising I use for the International RELF Society. So my message to you is, why not give it a go? Can you think of any reason why you shouldn't be doing it? Let's have a look. How many records have we got so far? Well, at the moment, as of yesterday, 1.45 million records are held in the totality of the archives that the Guild hold. That seems a reasonable number, but it should be a lot bigger than that. But that's predominantly from, you can see the top 10. Millington, you're not surprised, is at the top, but Fleming could overtake him fairly soon. Raymond is a fairly hefty user, but Roy Raymond works with Paul quite a lot on this project, so I'm not surprised he's there. Paul Howes, and his Howes one name study, is gradually catching up, and I'm sure it will overtake it because I know the volume of data he has got and the amount of work he's putting into it. And then you can see some of the other names. The significant one to me, of course, is Ralph manages to get into the top 10. We come in struggling at number 9. What else does it say? The people who are using it: Millington, ex-committee member; Raymond, committee member; Howes, committee member; Ralph. Kemball is down at 17,000, I think, committee member. So we believe what we're providing is useful. We use it. We want others to use it. So, how many archives in the region? I hope these figures are correct. But South Surrey, 62 members, 4 archives. North Surrey, 67 members, 4 archives. London West, 56 and 6 archives. So we've got 14 archives out of 185. I'm not picking on Surrey, because the talk is here. If I had a talk for Kent, it would be fairly similar. In fact, I think it might just be worse. I'm not sure, but I should have the figures, because in my newsletters to the Kent members, I always tell them how many people have got profiles, how many are using the archive, etc. Anything I'm trying to promote, I try to tell them how many are using it and how much we're increasing. And I'm always saying, use the archive, use the forum, and use the profile. I suppose I'll be adding to that in my next newsletter, the bulletin board, but again, that's another subject. So, are any of you convinced that, well, I should ask the question, how many of you actually got an archive? That's good, yeah. But the ones that haven't, are you surprised at what's there?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Because I think that's important, because I think it's like a lot of things the Guild does. It's far more useful than you initially appreciate. It's like the Marriage Challenge. The Marriage Challenge is an excellent project, and it's well used. But we're now getting to the stage where we're getting reruns of marriage challenges, and there are more people using or applying for a marriage challenge on the rerun than the original one, because people are beginning to appreciate exactly what it's about.
It may be to add here that that the input is actually just done from a spreadsheet, isn't it?
Yes.
You just upload the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
You have to put it into the sequence that you're going to upload it.
Yeah.
I used to have a facility that I actually had to pay $12 a month for.
Mm-hmm.
So when Paul Millington bought this out, I went, yes!
Yes.
Because that's how much it costs.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's very good backup. You know, for
And how much do you pay for your membership there? Oh no, you're a life member, aren't
I'm
you?
a life member.
Cliff,
Yeah.
is there any way that someone, a stranger searching the archive, can access it and change it?
No. I'm 99.9% sure that is correct. But no, I think the security that Paul's placed on it, they shouldn't be able to. I will actually ask him just in case, but I'm pretty sure that could be his answer. Don't you think, Howard?
I would be very surprised
Yeah, yeah.
if there were otherwise.
Because he's obviously restricted the results you're getting anyway, and only you have access to the data itself. One thing I didn't mention is initially the way you changed the data was you re-uploaded, sorry, you added in the data that you wanted added in, and then you re-uploaded the whole file. Well, now you can actually add in, attend data to the file itself. So you can amend individual records and then upload it, or you can just say, I've got 100 more records, I like these, put at the end. I think that's how it works, but again, Paul's been developing it, it's good, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other part, I deliberately made the discussion about the archive because I feel it's a valid thing, and it is one means of storing your data. But I want to open the discussion about what sort of facilities do you use? I did ask the questions at the beginning. Do you store your data? Have you got your data protected? At this stage, any of you got any advice?
I recently moved to Crash Plan, mainly because of the fact that it's continually updating all the time. As long as you've got your machine on, it does it all in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
And it takes a while to actually do the first initial upload, but thereafter it's something that goes on in the background.
Yeah, I've been meaning to try it out, but again.
Yeah. And it's a lot cheaper than I used to do another one, Mosey. A lot cheaper than Mosey, and it's called Crash Plan, and I really do recommend it.
Yeah.
And of course, also it actually enables me to actually back onto a hard drive that's actually in the house, but then onto a server probably somewhere in California. For the rest of it, but very, very good facility.
Yeah.
And of course, it just doesn't back up family history. It backs up
everything you want
everything
to.
you want to.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Do you know the cost, Teresa?
I'm just trying to think how much it is, but it's not free.
No.
Definitely
But it's not that expensive. I know I had a quick look at it. I thought, oh, this looks quite useful.
Yeah.
When I get a spare moment, I'll start using it.
Teresa, perhaps you could explain how that's different to you having Dropbox.
Oh, well, this Crash Plan is really to ensure that you don't ever lose any of your data. Dropbox is okay. I mean, I use Dropbox a lot now because I will, as being the editor, if I send something out, I'm actually sending out files 2 to 3 megabytes at a time, and of course it really fills up my inbox and everything. So I use Dropbox, but there is a doubt. It's a cloud. It's not a Crash Plan. It's not, and of course you have to actually
lose everything.
Yes, you can lose everything, and then the other thing is you've got to actually push it.
Yeah.
And again, if you've got the sort of size of files that I've got, then you're talking about you have to pay megabucks for Mosey.
Yeah.
Unless you're fortunate as an editor, you keep on getting these these gifts. I've got quite a lot in there now, actually. So.
I'm in my first year using Carbonite. I used that because I saw it discussed on the forum, and I thought I'd give it a go. I also run my PC with 2 hard drives synchronized. And I've lost both of them separately. So I was okay because I always had a copy. I find Carbonite okay, but I'm on a very slow internet line. So I'm waiting for a decent speed, and I'll have a review of everything.
Okay.
I've gone for a slightly different solution. I've got a 2 gigabyte hard drive attached to the router, so it backs up across the network, but equally well I could log on here and access all my files here with my PC switched off. Is that
right,
the router
so
and the hard
you've
drive?
got access to it all the time,
So it's ready access. It's my own personal Dropbox, if you like, and it is pushed, so it is
Yeah.
up to date all the time, and wasn't that expensive.
Yeah, I use Google Drive, Dropbox, as well as various other backup facilities. But that includes, we use Google Drive a lot for Guild financial matters, for sharing data between whoever's hopefully providing money to the Guild, such as seminars, conferences, etc. Yeah.
I think there's various ways of getting free storage online as well, and companies like Google Drive give 5 gigabytes of storage for free.
Yep.
I think there's also Amazon Cloud.
Yes.
There's Dropbox, SugarSync as well, which is very user friendly.
SkyDrive.
SkyDrive. So there's
Yeah,
if
there's
you
quite a
Google,
lot, yeah.
if you just Google free online storage, you actually get quite a lot. Box are a new group, and they're offering 50 gigabytes at the moment.
Yeah.
If you have, I think it's a Sony phone. But if you know somebody who has a Sony phone, they can get the 50 gigabytes for you. So that could be worth looking at.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And also with the likes of Dropbox, the more you recommend it to people, you get more free.
Yeah, yeah.
I've gone up to quite a lot.
Yeah, I was trying to use the Dropbox. I've at the moment got 10 volunteers who are basically keying in, transcribing all the data on the certificates that I send to them. But when I first started the BMD Vault, sending the information to them was horrendously difficult, mainly because the size of the files were relatively big, and they weren't that big. And I could never guarantee you who was actually getting them. I had to double check with them all the time. Have you received it? Because obviously it can take weeks before they come back with the transcribed data. So we were trying to develop a means of giving them access to more information fairly simply. I sent out the first 10 files, and I think half of them, for one reason or another, didn't get them. And that included a husband and wife, and the husband got it and the wife didn't. And I still to this day haven't worked out because they're both using the same facility. So I started using Dropbox as a facility, but I got opposition. People said, I don't like Dropbox, I'm not going to use it. So I was using Dropbox for some, I was emailing for others. So we're trying to develop a facility where the sending out of the data files will be done via the Guild website, and the return information will be done via the Guild website, and it will control who has access to what. Because one of the problems I have with Dropbox is that I've got something like 300 files that still need work on. And at the moment I was controlling it by just sending it to them individually. But as soon as I made Dropbox available, they technically had access to all of it. And I've got a spreadsheet that enables them to say, well, I'm going to use this one and I will send you results on that. But it got a bit chaotic, and I tended to lose a little bit of control. Wasn't helped by the fact that I lost 2,000 to 3,000 emails. Basically anything from June this year to 2010 suddenly disappeared from my system.
So you don't have a backup of your emails then?
Yes, I have. I mean, all mine is on. You don't catch me that easy. I've got Virgin, and I've got access to it on Virgin. I've also got another backup. But it also meant that I'm used to searching everything on my main system, and it's just getting terrible that I did a search, and I couldn't find things that I knew jolly well that I had. And it even got to the stage recently, I got something from the webmaster within a couple of days, and I did a search, couldn't find it. Went on to Virgin and found it on there, because at least I know everything is on there and the search is reasonable, but I don't like keep on going to Virgin to do a search. I'm busy doing other work. So I found it and saw what date it was and what time it was. Went back to my system. Even with the date and time, I still couldn't find it. So, you know.
Cliff,
Yeah.
do you actually have material copied onto hard drives, and hard drives in the library, for instance?
Yes, we've got 3 backups of everything that's on the website, and we.
No, I was thinking of individual collections.
Where some guild members submitted their data
Where it's
for us to
on-
hold.
It's perhaps in the library anyway, so it's available in whatever format they want it to be available. But then as one of the backups, you actually have a hard drive with it all on as well.
Yes, we have for those that have asked for it. We've even got some who've asked us to store in our remote store location. We've got 2 of them at the moment. The physical disk itself, and they don't want it on the hard drive for whatever reason. So we're just maintaining a physical CD or DVD for them.
There's a downside on that though, because of course that depends on if it's left there.
Yeah.
What's the the technical thing's going to be in the future.
Which is why I always said we ought to transfer it onto the hard drive, onto the main drive anyway, or drives that we've got. But this individual said, no, I only gave you the DVD, I want you to look after that DVD. But, whatever you want us to do is basically what we try to do. Yeah.
Is the archive just for source data, births, marriages, deaths, census records? What about reconstructed trees?
It hasn't got that far, but because the ability to structure what the file is that you want to save, the answer should be yes. But I'm not sure how it will be done. Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but there is a way of uploading a GEDCOM to the website.
There's a number of GEDCOM files in the Guild Library.
Which makes the content searchable. So it's not just like depositing a GEDCOM, you can upload it and make the content searchable,
That's
I believe.
very helpful.
That is exceedingly helpful. I wish I'd known that at the beginning. I was dreading the fact of putting 4,500 records and typing each one in. How do you physically get the information into the archive?
Well, in the same way I've got all my data on various phone issue programs. I just also have it on spreadsheets and databases themselves. But I can change the information from one to another fairly rapidly.
Well, I don't have the spreadsheets. So.
Yeah.
But the GEDCOM solution is
it's a logical, yes indeed.
Cliff, a related question to the earlier one. What about images? What kind of images?
Certainly on the library it's there, but as far as the archive facility, if it can be designed, because it's only storage of data.
It's just a file.
Yeah. You'll just have the field as image fields. I don't believe there's one there, but all I would suggest is you look at the archive facility and make the template. Yeah, try it out basically.
It could be that GEDCOM piece is part of the library rather than the archive, I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
It is, yeah.
Can you explain a bit more about the BMD Vault, how that actually works?
Oh, it's being developed, yeah. The idea is, in the end anyway, is that we're going to have one big database that has all the births, marriage and death. Well, let's keep it simple for the moment because it's going to expand beyond that. It's going to be births, marriages and deaths of all the records. So the simple answer is initially we had all the certificates are in the Guild website that we couldn't show because that was the main purpose.
Is that a digital photocopy of them in the centre?
Because it was an exact copy of the Crown version, we couldn't put it on the website. Or people would argue whether you could or couldn't, but to be safe, I would say you couldn't. So the idea would be to put a pro forma one, which is the full certificate. And to do that, you would need to extract all the data, put it in a spreadsheet, and then create via the facility on the Guild website as a full certificate. But instead of doing just that, we've developed the overall database, and the webmistress, now the webmaster, is developing at the moment. So there will be a massive, eventually anyway, database that will be searchable for every record that's there. But it won't just be birth, marriage and death, it'll be far wider, and it'll be covering every single country. So to give you another example, the sort of data that we can get onto the BMD fairly quickly is all the various marriage challenges that have been carried out by the marriage challengers who actually use spreadsheets to provide the vault certificates to the people who requested the search in the first place. There are people like the marriage challenge coordinator who does everything by hand. So he writes everything out and then sends off the copy of the certificate, a handwritten certificate, and I know because I've got hundreds of them from him and I'm delighted. But there was two things. I said, well, what if I don't receive them? He said, well, I have to do the search again. And I said, but you can't provide me with any data for the BMD vault. To which we then got to the system whereby before he sends anything out, I provided him with a new scanner and he scans everything in and then sends me the information so we can transcribe it. I'm also getting family history societies sending me certificates. I had one the other day, a suitcase of certificates. And they said, any chance you could get this, because I said initially we can get it digitised via digitisers, but in the end we did it internally, i.e. I did it. And basically in between two committee meetings, one of the committee members brought it from up north, gave it to me, and I got it all scanned and gave it back to them. And they've now got not only X number of thousand certificates have been scanned in, but they've also got the equivalent spreadsheet with all the data on that. They can now make that available. But also the guilds have got all that information, some of which will be one-name studies. Others of it is what I consider to be future one-name studies.
that material, how is it indexed when you, as you're scanning it? Are you doing an index as you go along?
Well, no, basically it's been digitised in the order I get it. So some of them are already in some sort of order, so they could be in an indexable order. Others are all over the place, and some of them are duplicated left, right and centre. So for instance, obviously on marriages, for instance, you will have A through to Z, and John Abbott is marrying Jean Kemball, so it's under A and K. But of course there'll be different transcribers doing the work, and therefore they will both be submitted. But the programme is actually looking at the extent to which we have duplication. So that sorts out the volume of them, but the actual indexing of them, I haven't worried about that because I'm leaving that to Anne. But basically I want as much on there as possible for us to be able, initially for guild members to search, but my long-term aim is for the BMD vault to be available to the public, which will draw in more people to the guild, draw in more data, and draw in more interest to the guild. The other thing is, because of the nature of the BMD vault, we had all the information that is on a certificate, including the minister who participated in the marriage, for instance. So you've got all the information, as opposed to the marriage index, which has only got a limited amount of information, and of course the vast majority of it you can't search because it's your own data anyway. And the same with marriage challenges. There is only a certain amount of that is available. The idea is at the end is you're going to have this BMD, it's my idea, not my idea, but my vision for the future is the BMD vault will have the guild index on feeding in, it will have the guild marriage challenge, and somebody does a search on a particular name, they come up with various hits, and it will say, this is on the marriage index, for instance, therefore it was at this church. This one that's on the marriage index, we've got a copy of it as well because it's part of the BMD vault. and the same will be, there's been marriage challenges on this, and there'll be links back to where we've had approval to guild members. So anyone searching at this stage another guild member, they will say, oh, who do I contact? And you'll know who to contact. But a lot of the names you won't be able to, because it's the other side of the name, and nobody's actually searching it. And that will become more prevalent when we hopefully open up the BMD, and this is a long way off yet, to members of the public. There's a lot to do, but we've done a lot in a few of us have done a lot in a relatively small space of time.
Yeah. Cliff, have you given any guidance on the website about how you can not scan, but you know what the settings or the preferences should be for scanning, certificates?
No, because I've concentrated on the fact that we will be doing it, but it's a possibility. Okay. There's a little bit in the members' handbook, which I know who wrote some of that, and there is a bit on the website. Again, it's Anne copied a lot from the previous version of the members' handbook, and then we made sure that the new handbook was in line with what was on the website, and vice versa. But it could, if I look at it, I'm sure that it could be expanded a bit.
If we scan our full certificates, is there a template for a database that we could put the information into to send you the image and the data?
Both. I would be absolutely delighted, and the answer is yes, yes. Yeah.
Well, yes, but if they're birth certificates or death certificates.
Yeah. At the moment, there's standard ones for births, marriages and deaths, and censuses for the UK. I'm gradually expanding those for other countries. I'm now in discussion with Paul Howells for America. Of course, in America, it's not a standard one anyway, and it's not even a standard one for one state. So the volume is going to be great, but it's going to sort of make it more flexible to say, well, it should at least contain this type of data as an essential part, and then give you the variety from then onwards. But if somebody has got a whole load of certificates and would also like to key in the data or just transfer it across, because you may already have it in your spreadsheets, I'll be absolutely delighted. And I can certainly send you the pro formas my 10 helpers, the 11 including myself, are using at the moment.
Well, you can become a helper.
In fact, I got quite a lot of marriage. I've got about 150 marriage challenge spreadsheets from various people who have done marriage challenges. Did I get any from you, Howard? I know you did. No, I know you did to the marriage challenge, but I'm not sure it went to the BMD vault because Roy was discussing with various people. So I was going to actually double check
because I still have all the data.
Yeah, I know you have, which is why, because I had a quick look and I thought, oh, look, I can't see Howard here at the moment.
Tens of thousands of marriages.
Yes, so I was about to send you an email and say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, that was because Roy was doing all the discussions and negotiations with various people.
Yes.
And so I was talking to him the other day. I'm pretty sure Howard hasn't given me it, but I know he's got a tremendous amount. So yeah. I'll double check and I'll get back to you.
I have a lot of data. I'm not very computer literate, unlike most people in this room, I suspect. My data is nearly all on Excel. There's some explanatory documents in Word and a few PDFs. I simply want to give an instruction to my executors to copy the lot to the Guild archive. Is that possible?
Yes.
Without any complicated formatting?
Yep. Whatever format it is in, we will do our best to put it in the format that we would want, depending on how much effort we want to put into it. Part of the, there's two aspects of that. One is I had elderly gentleman get in touch with me desperately, wanting to get the Guild to take all his data, including all his paper data. And he contacted us, unfortunately via the Guild main address, which is the SOG address, which we periodically get via the secretary. And the secretary then sends it on. On this occasion there was a fairly healthy delay, or unhealthy delay, but as soon as I got it, I contacted him and he said, when can you come over? And I said, this afternoon. So I went over to it, loaded my car up with all his non-ONS data, and then spent the next 4 or 5 hours talking to him about his one-name study. And then brought it all back and digitised it, which the Guild paid for, but we, in the members' handbook, we suggest that if you want your data digitised, it would be useful if you want to pass it on to the Guild. It will help if there is some sort of donation coming with it. We don't insist upon it, but there's a limit to which the Guild can do. I'll give you a couple of examples. A local one in Kent had a particular surname, and they gave us £1,000, and we digitised all their material, and we made it available to the SOG as well.
Yeah, that is not my problem. Data is already digital, but it may not be in the form that you would most like.
Yeah, which is why I said we will accept all data in whatever format it's in, but there will always be an attempt to make, I say, because I know this is what I would do, to make that more usable. If you've got it, for instance, in a spreadsheet, we convert. Shouldn't be a problem. You'll get it to whatever. I would, almost any data I have in a spreadsheet, I put in a database, and I also put it into a family history program.
Well,
the master genealogist.
We're told to make Excel spreadsheets and tab separated variable files. That's an easy operation, except that I wrap my text, and when you put it into a TSV file, it comes out unwrapped. So all your fields have to be elongated or something or other. You have to do something with them. I don't want my executors to have any hassle. I just want to be able to do it.
They would only need the instruction to pass on the data to the Guild, or wherever you want it, hopefully the Guild. The Guild would then determine the best way of manipulating that data. And that's the one thing about the Guild. If you don't know how to do something, there'll be somebody in the Guild who does know how to do it. So the answer is, please, hopefully it's a long, long way away, but please send the data to the Guild. And we will treasure it and make sure it's usable.
You mentioned a sum there for the preserving of one archive. What's the sort of costs? Can you break it down on, say, a 50,000 item archive, or do you have
let's give you an idea.
What would £1,000 pay for? Is what I suppose I'm asking.
It wouldn't restrict what we do, but it would help us in the decision of taking it on board. To give you an example, the digitisation via the digitisation project was costing us about between 2 and 3p per page. So you can multiply that out into the number of pages you want digitised. Since then, we've now brought it in-house, so we're doing our own digitising, mainly because people like Peter Copsey, who's a librarian or the archivist, was spending so much time sorting out all the data, because, as you can imagine, it'd be in all sorts of formats, and well, it's more the physical condition than anything else. Staples here and all sorts of things, different sizes, etc. And he was spending a lot of time sorting it out, and he said, well, hold on a minute, the time I spend in sorting it out, I might as well feed it in the scanner. And he actually spent a year when he didn't send anything to the scanner, the scanning company themselves, and he's now going to do it himself. In addition to that, the Guild have purchased a scanner, which is feeding scanner, which is very useful. It does it fairly quickly. I'll brought it along as a quick demonstration if we get time. But basically you can do 30 to 50 pages at a time. It's A4, but there is a facility, but it's a long-winded one for doing A3. But it's got the delightful facility of being able to scan the backside of the page or ignore it, depending on whether there's anything there or not. And more importantly, for a certificate that's bigger than A4, it will put it on A4. Yes, that's rather good. I got 1,000 cards that the library have got, the archivist has got, and he was a bit reluctant to scan it in. And knowing his facility, I said, no, it's probably not a good idea. I know somebody who can do it. And that did it very well. Yeah. Admittedly, 10 at a time, but it did it, and it was very useful. So after we had a cup of tea, I've just got a few certificates. But the thing I would emphasise, if you have got certificates that you're willing to give me for a short while, I'll get them scanned in. If you're even better, that you want to transcribe the data into spreadsheets as well, or they're already in spreadsheets, or you've done marriage challenges with the data already there and you haven't supplied it to me yet, I'll be grateful for it. That's why I'm confident of getting over 1 million records by, let's say, conference next year. But I will always optimistic. No. I'm renowned for.
We are the best.
I'm renowned for two things. One is I'm very optimistic, and I very rarely say no, which is a bad thing. It's how we get sent many times.
Accuracy, correlating a scanned BMD, for instance, with someone's transcribed data.
Yeah.
May not be the same.
Yeah, indeed.
When you get a conflict, how do you know which to refer to? Particularly if you haven't had the scanned certificate.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, when they're transcribing the information, we've got a bit more control because the person who does the initial transcribing of the scanned data, it then gets rechecked. And also the program that we've got on the website eventually will do a certain amount of basic checking as well. So that will try to improve the quality. There will always be gaps. There will always be inaccuracies. But for the marriage challenges themselves that have already taken place, where I've got the spreadsheet, there's a certain amount of checking I can do. But obviously there's not a tremendous amount we can do about the quality of the final transcriptions themselves.
If I had a record, for instance, which I then chose to digitise to forward to you, but the record is simply that we all know Aunt Nanny was born on the 1st of June because it was in grandmother's birthday book or whatever.
Yeah.
If I transcribe that information and send it to you as an image, you have no control over the accuracy of that statement.
No. But that goes for a lot of the data that we receive. We need in anyone who's doing family history research or one of those types.
Names on marriage certificates as well.
Yeah.
So is there some way of revealing in the archive that these are statements as opposed to certified facts?
The easiest answer to that is that there's a note field in all the records, so there's an ability for the individual who's supplying the information to put a note. There's also a facility for the people who are doing the transcribing for the BMD vault to put a note about anything that relates to that certificate. And there's also an ability to put a comment against the name by saying this looks like such and such, or there is a problem with it, to just put an emphasis that don't take it as read. I should add one last thing. Most of the transcribers that are working with me, not for me, are checking against the free BMD as well. So we're trying to correlate as much as we can. I think the end result is the quality of the transcription will be better than a lot of transcription, but it won't be perfect.
You said at the beginning of the talk that you're opening beyond England and Wales, BMDs.
Yep.
So when you talk about New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, you're not going to get the certification that you're after.
No, it will vary depending on who's doing the transcribing, what
well, in some
country it is.
cases, and in South African case, you will not get the certification at all.
Yeah. But this is based on the publication of a particular, I mean initially, it's going to expand beyond that, but it's based on, for simplistic terms, birth, marriage and death of a physical document. We've obviously got a lot of data that doesn't belong to physical data, but will be obtained via a variety of sources of data and logical conclusions based on probably 3 or 4 lots of data, which is what we do in the master genealogist. You determine each individual set of data, what quality that data is, what assurance you've got against it, and you can increase that reliability depending on. In my case, I always have at least 3 lots of data before I'm satisfied with anything. Yeah. We're not perfect, but we're going a long way to improve. Yeah.
I was just going to say,
sorry, yeah.
towards when my mum wanted to retire, she'd lost her birth certificate and we ordered it, and it wasn't the birth date that she'd celebrated for 60 years.
Oh yes.
Her father made a mistake. You can't even believe a birth certificate.
Yeah. And that even goes... Yeah.
No, it was the father who registered it. They think he went to too many pubs on the way.
He was celebrating the birth.
Yes.
But it's like on death certificates where it says the date of birth, you know.
Yeah.
That's only what the person...
So when she died, I had to use the birth date that was on the certificate because that's what they go by. Yeah. Even though it wasn't the one she...
And some of the certificates I've got that have been given to me, I've got on the front, but mainly on the back, a little notation if there's any sort of variance, or it may even have information about linking people that are on that certificate with their overall family tree. That's one of the benefits of having things on the back. If there is something of importance on the back of the certificates, the notes field is an area where you can put it. At the moment, I do all the double checking, but we're trying to get the Anne to do it for me. Yeah, but I will do a cursory look.
One busy person to another.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah. Which is why I was able to do this presentation on Wednesday night, Thursday. Yeah. If you're busy, you can get it done. And it's a subject that I'm terribly interested in. I hope you found it interesting.
Absolutely. I think that's given us a huge amount of food for thought. I'm impressed that you never once said BMD fault. which is a little in-joke.
I did a committee.
And it's not even next to the V either. But there you go. I would say that as a group, the last meeting we had, we talked about profiles. Since that meeting, 2 of the members have now got profiles. So after this meeting, I'm hoping for good things from you, and that those numbers will increase.
Oh right, I should be monitoring.
Tessa Keogh has also done a how-to video.
Yes, there's some brilliant
on the profile or the
yeah, on the profile.
Yeah.
I've just started looking at Tessa's videos, and they're brilliant, aren't they? Absolutely brilliant. I don't know whether anybody have ever looked at them. They are on the website, not just on the BB board, but they are on the website. So do have a little look at them, because if you're like me, I learn by looking. I don't always learn by hearing. I have to look and hear. And
I wasted my time then.
No, you haven't, because I'm going to ask if I can have those slides.
Oh good, thank you very much. That reminds me, all the slides will be on the Guild website.
So thank you very much indeed. I know you put a lot of effort into that, and I know I didn't have to bamboozle you that much. You did sort of offer.
As I said, it's one of my faults. Faults,
yes.
It's one of my faults. I don't often say no.
And I really thank you very much. But I think another thank you is Bob, who's been working away like a Trojan there. He promised he wouldn't put me on this video, but that looks like it's coming. There's definitely going to be happening. I've got to face this way.
I'll zoom into the cake.
Zoom in. we had a joke at the conference last. Bob was videoing it, and I went up to take something off the thing, and I looked at the camera that he was actually using to video, and all I could see was these. I said, please delete that quickly. The other person we've got...
He's got it archived, don't worry.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's blown everything. I think the other person we have to think of is for supplying this superb venue. Sonia does it many times. I never have to ask her twice. In fact, she's always sort of saying, when are you coming, when are you coming back? But it's not just the venue. If those of you who haven't actually seen the things coming up the stairs, there's some rather super little eats there. So do turn round and come and have another cuppa.
I've been watching it for the last 10 minutes.
Haven't you noticed it going faster and faster?
I'll get my 3 digestives in.
So thank you. Thank you.